good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are when you're watching this. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your schedule to attend this virtual open house and to learn more about the Creative Leaders Guild, the community, and the signature blue chip program, the Creative Leaders Guild Institute. And I am Heather Nolin, and I'm putting my LinkedIn in the chat for those of you who want to connect with me. And I'm the founder and creative director of Nolin Consulting, as well as the Creative Leaders Guild. And in today's call, we're going to hear from CLGI alumni about the program and the impact on them personally and professionally. And along the way, I'll also give you some insight into the Creative Leaders Guild program, including the logistics of the nomination application process, as well as the Creative Leaders Guild, of which the CLGI alumni become members. But first, I want to introduce my colleague and Creative Leaders Guild project manager, Giovanna Urist, who is also on the call. I'll say, hi, Giovanna.
Hi, Heather. Thanks everyone for coming today and for your interest in CLGI. I am the program manager and I work with Heather on kind of all of the various things that happen during the program before and after. Today, I will be working behind the scenes, monitoring the Q&A and making sure that everything goes well. But before we get going, a little housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording and some other resources will be sent to everyone who registered. Please share the link and the resources with anyone else you think would be interested in applying to the program. The webinar is meant to be more of a conversation than a presentation, so please ask questions at any time, and you can use the Q&A feature in Zoom or raise your hand and we can try to get to everybody's questions. But if for some reason we don't get to your question, please do feel free to reach out to me or Heather, and I will put my email in the chat as well. Unfortunately, one of our CLGI alumnae, Lily Siegel, the executive director of the Hamiltonian Artists in Washington, D.C., who was scheduled to participate today, cannot join us. However, we've got plenty of voices and we are so thrilled to have Hope with us. But I am going to let Heather introduce Hope. So I'm going to toss it back to you, Heather.
Great. Thanks, Giovanna. And Lily, we will miss you. We miss you. And I am delighted and very grateful and thankful that we do have one member of our CLGI 2024 cohort with us, and that is Hope Sullivan, who is the executive director of the Vermont Studio Center in Johnston, Vermont, which is one of the largest and oldest fine arts and writing residency programs in the US. VSC's mission is to provide studio residencies in an inclusive and international community, honoring the creative work as the communication of spirit through form. And Hope is a lifelong champion for the creative sector and continually advocates for creators themselves. And beyond advocating for proactive support for artists and writers, she believes deeply in fostering a rich creative environment, driving economic growth and positive change within communities. And in her day-to-day, Hope facilitates decisions on whatever critical issues the VSC faces, and she spends the rest of her time focused on the shiny future and how to convey it, supporting the team where there are staffing gaps and areas where quality of execution is not sufficiently developed to achieve key strategic aims. Being the executive director for the Vermont Studio Center and supporting the organization's evolution to focus on this shiny future is a source of great joy for Hope. And I love her LinkedIn bio. And Giovanna, if you can put her LinkedIn connection in the chat, please. Hope describes herself as executive director at the Vermont Studio Center, city mouse in the country, wannabe homesteader, alt home-ish school parent and advocate, pollinator garden enthusiast, and dramatic writer by avocation. Wowza. I love that. Hi, Hope. Thank you for being here.
Well, hi. Thank you for having me. That was pretty funny.
I love this bio and I love your LinkedIn headline. I love it because I really get a sense of who you are and what you stand for and how you are as a person besides just your job title. And I remember during the Creative Leaders Guild Institute when you were working on your bio and your LinkedIn profile. And I know that these are the final products and are kind of evidence of your transformation during the program. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about this change as manifested in your bio.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. And welcome, everybody. It's nice to be here with you. Yeah, it manifested way beyond, I guess, my LinkedIn profile, which certainly was one symptom of the program that I was able to update that. But really the biggest takeaway for me, and I guess the most unexpected and probably the most resonant, was just how important it is to bring your whole being, your own whole self to your position. I think I was anticipating originally going into a professional development program that it would really be focused on profession. And it was really revelatory to have the opportunity and the space to share who we individually were. And it helped the group, the cohort of us, to create really strong connections. But, you know, it's a different way to approach work, for sure, for me. I hadn't been anticipating that. I wasn't quite ready for it. And it ended up having just a huge ripple effect through my really entire life. For example, like when your work is being assessed, if you're in the performance review phase, it's really about specific milestones. There might be something behavioral, but it's really not about you as a person. And that holistic perspective was really the new thing that CLGI brought for me. It wasn't wholly focused on job success. It was focused on whole person success, which I thought was awesome, but unexpected.
Thanks, Hope. You've really just described one of the reasons why I created this program. It's because we are more than our job title. I sort of discovered over the 20 plus years that I've been working in academia and museums and have served on multiple nonprofit arts and culture boards. And during this time, I discovered several things. One of them is we are more than our job titles, but often that's all people sort of expect us to be. But I also discovered that many women in the area of arts and culture nonprofits are really hungry for a network of female colleagues pursuing similar goals in which they can grow personally and professionally, and especially for women who are at the top in executive director roles, that they often feel like they are the one or the only, and therefore a loneliness comes along with that. I also realized that museums, libraries, archives, cultural and conservation centers, performing arts organizations, and other nonprofit organizations often face similar challenges, but that they're rarely engaged outside of their own silo and seldom collaborate for mutual benefit. And even if oftentimes if they have the idea to collaborate, they don't have the connections or the network to do that. So I founded the Creative Leaders Guild in 2021 as a community for visionary female leaders in the nonprofit sector to meet both the need for growth and connection and also as a way to foster the collaborations among these organizations. And I modeled the Creative Leaders Guild after the merchant and craft guilds that I studied as part of my doctorate in Renaissance art history. And so like these guilds, the Creative Leaders Guild offers its members a collaborative and compassionate environment in which to share expertise, expand professional networks, and forge genuine camaraderie through mutual curiosity, generosity, and honesty. I use these phrases, Creative Leaders Guild and the Creative Leaders Guild Institute. And the Creative Leaders Guild is the larger community into which all of the Creative Leaders Guild Institute alumnae gain access after the program. The investment cost for the 2025 program also includes a fee for one-year membership within the Creative Leaders Guild, covering cost of programming, etc. At present, there are 13 members of the Guild, all of whom are alumni of the program, as I mentioned. And future Guild programming could include things such as quarterly seminars and gatherings, an annual alumni reunion, which is already scheduled for the spring, special in-person events, and other exclusive opportunities such as conferences and potentially some funding opportunities and online courses. That's kind of the longer vision for the Guild itself. Hope, going back to you and your experiences. I feel like this is, if it were a magazine showing a renovation of a kitchen, it would show the before and then the after. So taking us to kind of the hope before picture and then the hope after picture of the Creative Leaders Guild. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to the program, how you found out about it? Did you have to advocate to participate? Why this program? And then a little bit of the after. We're now about 6 months out. I think your program ended June 28th. So what have the last 6 months looked like? What have you put into practice? And are there any stories of success or achievement that you can share with the group?
To start with how I came to CLGI, I was relatively new in my position at Vermont Studio Center and was speaking with a kind of a core stakeholder from the history of the organization who's not affiliated as closely anymore, but is still certainly a true friend of Vermont Studio. And I was talking with her candidly one day about just kind of the sense of overwhelm that I was feeling, and not anything that I didn't anticipate, but just, so many balls in the air, kind of getting up and running and not really having the resources to be able to step back, like not having that group, that connection that Heather was just talking about. So I was very fortunate that this woman was friends with one of the participants, or she knew one of the participants who came to the very first cohort for CLGI. And she suggested that I apply. So, I looked into it. I watched the webinar from last year with Robin Goes and other alumni, and it seemed very interesting. And at first I was kind of hesitant. I wasn't quite sure what I was getting into, which is one of the reasons I wanted to be part of this, to help answer any questions you might have. But I decided to put my hat in the ring and just see what it was about. And then I was fortunate in that I was able to get funding from an individual affiliated with my organization who wanted me to be able to do this experience. So I didn't have to get buy-in in terms of funding, just in terms of the time commitment. So that made it easier for me. And I think where I was professionally, as I mentioned, it was a little bit of a state of overwhelm, not really having connections. I also hadn't engaged in any personal professional development for years. Just as I had been in more senior positions, I was really always advocating for staff. It's a core tenet of everywhere I've worked, but it hadn't applied to me for quite a long time. So I was excited, but also a little bit fearful, wondering what it was going to be about. After the program ended, so skipping over the entire actual experience, which we'll get to, I guess. So now I have this cohort of women who I continue to be in touch with. They're absolutely astounding. Each of them in their field is truly impressive. And that's one of the things I love the most, is that the people I was meeting, although as or more accomplished than I am in their careers in the cultural landscape, weren't all from the exact same silo where I'm working. So I really got to get some different perspectives. We have very similar challenges, but a different angle and kind of different stakeholders that we're juggling. So that has been super helpful. It is fun to get the occasional text to the group as well. And I might mention it later. I think you're going to be asking something about how we're actually taking advantage of Creative Leaders Guild, but I'm actually working with one of my team member participants, where she came and helped me with the project. And I've actually been able to visit another couple, and I'm very much looking forward to the guild as it gets up and running for me. So I get to reconnect with folks. So.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Yeah, we'll hear a little bit more about your specific stories in a little bit. Let's see. Let me share a slide here. I normally don't like to put lots of text heavy slides because everybody stops listening and they start reading. But I'll read right along with you. So here are some details for this year's program, this 2025 program. As in the past, it's still 9 weeks long. It will kick off in person in New York on April 30th of next year. And it'll be 3 days of intensive time in New York City. And then you can follow along here weeks 1 through 9, concluding on June 25th. So the dates are Wednesday, April 30th through Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. And as I said, for the first time, the program will kick off with 3 of these foundational and fun days in New York City, where the participants will meet face-to-face right from the very start and really immerse themselves in pretty intensive programming, creative thinking, strategy development, and meaningful network. And then the remainder of the 9 weeks will, as you can see, weave together both highly interactive online engagement together with time for coaching, catch up, implementation, and reflection. And then there is, in week 7, as in the past, this transformative week at a private ranch in Wyoming, which has always been really a highlight for everyone. And Giovanna, do you want to give us some more details?
Sure. I'd be happy to. So the orientation week is one of those points that participants receive a lot of information about the program and a lot of details. It is self-paced, and the most important thing that you first receive is access to the portal, which is how we do all of the communication between participants, presenters, Heather, and me, project manager, and that's where kind of all of the information lives. So we're not bombarding you with emails or texts or anything. Everything is through this one portal, which is great. And as alumna, you have access to the portal forever. So all of the materials that you engage with are all always online. The best part about CLGI, I think, is it's constantly being tweaked in the best possible ways in response to what the participants ask for, need, want, could use help with. And so one of the things that is new this year is that there will only be 2 days online per week, and those will be on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and all virtual programming will take place from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. There are a few exceptions of some coaching time that will be kind of sprinkled throughout the week, and as well as the final day, June 25th, which is a longer day of final presentations with some celebration included. The one thing obviously that we ask of you is, although we understand very much that life happens, that participants really do make every effort to be in full attendance at every virtual and in-person event. That's kind of the big overview of what the program looks like on a logistical level. But I'd like to turn it back to Hope. Hope, could you tell everyone a little bit about the format and the workload and how you managed your full-time job as well as attending CLGI?
Sure. Yeah. The truth is it was tough at moments. It was a little bit like drinking from a fire hose at first, trying to get used to the flow. But I think, and I know that some of my colleagues as well, the other participants, that what was really the program's effectiveness is really from that immersion and all of us being immersed together. And it was also kind of fascinating. Like we were going from topic to topic. Some of them I assumed that they would really resonate, and they did. And they were more standard, like professional development topics, and others that I hadn't anticipated at all ended up being the ones that have had lasting impact. And I'm not going to give away any of the secrets that Heather and Giovanna have as far as what they program for you, but it's really a wide range of kinds of activities that you're diving into. And so the workload it was a lot. And in terms of balance, it was just kind of hyper scheduling, which I think we were all joking about how we were all hyper schedulers already. So this is just like a whole other level. But that immersion together, that kind of like being in the flood as a group really was part of the bonding. And it was a way to get through a lot of different kinds of material and have kind of a common ground for conversation, which particularly when we got to Wyoming and we were in person together, it really gave us that shared understanding to start from.
Thank you. I love the water references.
Oh yeah, I still haven't gotten away from them. There was a large flood at my place of business a couple of years ago, and all water all the time.
Well, hopefully this was much more positive, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yep. I've turned the corner on the water references.
So let me give everybody a little more of the programming details before we ask a couple more questions of Hope and give a little more information. So who is the program for? The CLGI is for female leaders in nonprofit positions in arts and cultural organizations. And just to be clear that when we say leadership, of course, someone who is an executive director, an artistic director, but as well as those who are deputy directors, heads of divisions or departments, or project leads. I mean, really the definition of leadership is anyone who is managing people and resources, and also who has the ability to influence policy and affect change. And we're looking for people who are in libraries, archives, science museums, nature museums, natural history museums, rather, art museums, historical societies, ballet, opera, theater companies, as well as conservation, cultural centers, historic societies, as I mentioned, as well as art supporting entities such as foundations and granting organizations. And one other thing that I should mention in terms of where someone is kind of in their leadership development, the program is for people who are entering either their first leadership role. So they have, say, gone from a deputy director to an executive director, or this is their first time leading or managing people and resources, or that you have been in your current role for 7 years or less. And there have been people in the past who have made a move within their organization, that they've been at their organization for, say, 15 plus years, but they are new in their current role. And so they absolutely would qualify. To the cost, the 2025 CLGI, the program fee is $10,000. And this includes programming materials, all the activities, accommodations, as well as local program transportation and meals. However, all participants will be responsible for travel costs both to and from New York City and Wyoming. And the fee, as I mentioned, does include a year's worth of programming participation for the Creative Leaders Guild, so from July 2025 to June of 2026. And there are a limited number of scholarships that are available for the program fee only, not covering the travel costs. And those are awarded based on financial need as well as geographic and organizational diversity, because it's very important that while we have a tight, small cohort, we're aiming for 9 again. We want people to be from multiple different types of organizations, so not just museums, not just performing arts, and also just not from one geographic location. And so that's very important. I will share my screen again so that you can see this information here. The website at the top is the Creative Leaders Guild Institute website. All the information that we're talking about here in terms of the logistics, organization, et cetera, can also be found there, in addition to many other questions can be answered. And then the second link here is to the nomination form. And the nomination and application process, rather the application process for this year is slightly different than last year, where people are sent the application following a nomination. So we want to make sure all of our alumni from the previous 2 cohorts have already sent multiple links to people that they would recommend. And if you're on this call, if you're watching this video and this is of interest to you, nominate yourself. Several people, many people actually have already done that, and they will also be invited to apply. So the application deadline, which does after the nomination process, and nomination deadline is January 10th. Friday, January 10th. And then subsequently, the application deadline, which includes a recommendation, will be at midnight on Friday, January 24th. So essentially the nominations will close, and then there'll be 2 weeks where people who have been nominated will have that last chance to apply. And I know that at least one of our participants from last year, Gina Duncan from the Brooklyn Academy of Music, I think she applied on the last day. So just because you are someone who's very busy and applying the last day doesn't mean you don't have an opportunity to participate. So I will leave this slide up for just one more second here while I ask Hope the next question, and then I will turn this over to you so we can see your face. Hope, what was your favorite part of the program? And what surprised you the most about the community of women, the program, really anything, the modules, the interface? What was your favorite part and what surprised you?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess for what surprised me, I've sort of already mentioned it. So the community of women, how varied the group really was and all the different backgrounds and expertise. I learned a ton just about the different areas of the cultural landscape, which I loved. And I was also surprised by the variety of the programming. It was much broader and intensive than I had anticipated. So that was a wonderful surprise. But I'd say the thing that was my favorite part, and actually I think I saw this in the webinar last year, that so the favorite part I think was stated then too is the Wyoming experience. And I don't want to give away too much about it, but I can be kind of cynical. And I think watching the webinar, I was like, oh yeah, it'll be magical. It's cool. It's Wyoming. But it was like, it was really above and beyond, and such a wonderful place to really get to know my colleagues, and especially the dinners, having conversations over them, and then that living room area off the dining area, which we all hung out in. It was magical. And I say that with no cynicism now, so trust me.
I love that. Magical is good.
Yeah.
Magical is good. Thank you. So a couple of more concrete things here. So some takeaways from the program. This isn't just fairies and magic dust in Wyoming. There are some concrete things that people will come away with. And one of them is really an actionable plan for the future, for yourself and for your organization. And this will really become something that is of your own design. But in the program, you will have the structure, the support, the time, and the resources that you need to develop some attainable goals and a plan to execute your unique vision as a leader of yourself, your organization, your sector of the nonprofit world, and actually maybe even beyond. And there were some instances where some of the women It's like they've become activists, which is kind of amazing. Another takeaway is you will gain some new insights from your colleagues with fresh ideas, skills, and arts management and leadership expertise that's different from your own. And Hope has just mentioned this. And I'm, carefully selecting women from the last two cohorts that really create a cohort of diverse perspectives in, diversity in all senses, perspectives, positionality, geography, as well as nonprofit sectors. My hope is that everybody will learn something, certainly about themselves. That is one of the takeaways as well. You will learn about yourself, your leadership strengths and style, your values and priorities, your blind spots and hidden secret powers, and how to leverage all of these unique strengths and your personal profile to become a better and stronger leader of yourself and your organization. You also discover a new way of working, of being and thinking, and the program is structured very specifically in a way to help you form and sustain some of those essential habits of many top leaders. And you'll also gain a credible and ever-expanding community of women. You'll connect not only with your own cohort, but as well as those who came before you, including Hope in the 2023 and 2024 cohort, as well as those who come after into the future. And the community will only grow as more women participate in CLGI. And I'll just conclude my comments by telling you what really sets the Creative Leaders Guild apart, because there are dozens of other leadership programs out there, many of them with fancy names, many of them in fancy locations. But one thing that sets the Creative Leaders Guild Institute apart is it's for women. And I know that that is not unique, but it's certainly an essential part of the programming success. And it's specifically women in arts and cultural nonprofits. So it's not just one silo gathering. It's not just art museum people or just people in performing arts gathering together. And some of our alumna have said, for instance, that the women who participate in the experience of Wyoming and being together is the amazing part. And one other person said that they really love the program's focus on female leaders because it feels like a safe space where they can actually say and do things and have discussions that perhaps they couldn't otherwise if it were a broader demographic. Another thing that sets the CLGI apart is that it helps you focus on yourself as much as your role in your organization. And Hope has touched on this quite a bit. It's about self-leadership as much as your organizational and staff leadership. Another thing that sets the CLGI apart is confidentiality. This is explicit. It's not implicit. All of the presenters and attendees all sign a confidentiality agreement when they sign up for the program. And this allows participants to be completely open, vulnerable, and honest with each other and in turn with themselves. And participants have said that they were really comfortable sharing right from the very beginning. You're entering this program with potentially a group of total strangers. And it's been really remarkable how women just come in totally open, knowing because they are under the cone of silence, that all sign this confidentiality agreement, that it is a safe space to share about themselves and their struggles. Another thing that sets the program apart is that participants are allowed to reclaim, rediscover, and perhaps uncover for the first time creativity as a means of achieving their personal and professional goals. So creativity is not just for people like Toni Morrison or Pablo Picasso or Niccolò Paganini. It's an essential part of all of us for problem solving, innovation, collaboration, and so many other aspects of leadership. And participants can tap into this essence as part of the program. It's really built into all of the modules. And another common thread that I have observed through my career in the arts and nonprofit world is the higher up you get in the organization, the further away you get from really the creativity and the reason why you got into the profession in the first place. So for instance, curators who then become directors are no longer organizing exhibitions, or people who have come in as a content creator or a programmer, as they sort of move up further into the leadership ladder, oftentimes get further and further away from those opportunities that bring them so much joy. So the program gives participants a structured and productive way to reconnect with their creative selves and their ultimate why as to why they got involved in nonprofit arts and culture. Another thing that sets the CLGI apart is the network and the community. So at the end of the program, unlike many other programs, you're not just let loose into the wild with no connection opportunities in sight. And as I said, typically these programs, they get you in They take your money, they give you information, but it's really left up to the participants to be the ones responsible for the ongoing engagement. And the Creative Leaders Guild exists explicitly for this purpose, to provide ongoing, substantive, and enriching engagement and networking opportunities. And I'll toss it back to you, Hope, because I think that this is one of your most exciting, it's one of the most exciting stories that I've heard so far of the Guild kind of in action. Is how have you stayed in touch with the cohort? How often, kind of what are some of the significant benefits from your relationships of the cohort? I'll just toss it to you. Tell us a little bit about what's been going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess just to preface that, a part of the program is certainly about self-leadership and kind of larger questions of our core why, but there's also a really practical and logistic component to it, having these women to speak to and like talk about the kind of day-to-day and current challenges that we're facing. And as we're coming up with what, our creative conundrum would be, like going back and forth between more philosophical, grander scale, further out, and the more pragmatic, immediate challenges that we're facing. So I had a immediate challenge, which wasn't my big focus for my project for CLGI, but I had some immediate organizational structure challenges and was working through a lot of sort of HR-y stuff during the program. And one of my colleagues, who has a long career in the museum field, and also is really great at just developing experience. She's outreach experience, that's her whole career. I invited her up to Vermont Studio Center to come for a mini residency to evaluate, to have an objective opinion on what is the experience that we're offering, so that as I am kind of restructuring, so we have this kind of leadership team model with advancement, operations and finance, and then experience, like what is a chief of experience, and what would the ideal person in that position need to have as a skill set. So that was kind of a first foray into us getting some feedback, and she really won over my team as well, so they now buy into the idea of having somebody who's she has cachet because of where she works, and she knows the wider cultural landscape, so it really helps me a lot to further that conversation. But she's not the only one. There's other ones that I'm in touch with as well, because we had a theater leader who was part of our cohort, who's absolutely inspiring. And I just recently came across somebody who's using some of the same language around their new theater that they just founded in Vermont. So I was texting her to be like, have you heard of this person? I think they want to be part of the new generation of American theater. So anyway, so it's really fun to have that kind of connection across. So the woman who I had come and visit is Syra Levinson, who's a deputy director at the Guggenheim. And the one who I texted about this person in Vermont is Marissa Wolf, who is the artistic director at Portland Center Stage out in Oregon. Yeah, but many other amazing colleagues for sure. Yeah.
Great. So that's certainly one aspect that I think really sets it apart, is the ongoing connection and community of the alumni. And, lastly, the one thing that sets it apart is Wyoming. We've said this before. Certainly a week at a private ranch with your cohort and some special guests is a highlight. And this coming year, it will be from Sunday, June 8th until Saturday, June 14th. So the cohort will arrive on the Sunday and have programming right up through departure on Saturday, June 14th. I'm not going to reveal too much, but just to say that you will not be spending your days sitting around in a fluorescent lit classroom when you're out in Wyoming. And so this, in combination with, as I said earlier, new for this year, is we are starting the program in New York City. So these kind of two bookended in-person experiences together with these online interactive sessions, all these different ingredients kind of come together as Hope said, that Wyoming is magical, but hopefully the overall kind of special sauce, all these ingredients come together for this really magical program. So I hope that this gives everyone a good sense of what the Creative Leaders Guild and the Creative Leaders Guild Institute are, why I created this community and program, who they are for, and how you can nominate others or yourself, and then ultimately apply for entry into the 2025 CLGI cohort. And Giovanna, you want to take it?
Yes, we've got a question that Heather might be best for you. Are the sessions led by a variety of instructors?
Oh, good question. The answer is yes. Giovanna has an expertise. I have an expertise. And we, of course, have areas where we're not expert, and we bring in outside panelists. And the first year, we had people come in to discuss marketing, for instance, and PR at nonprofit organization and how that's different from the for-profit world. We had someone to talk about negotiations, strategic leadership. We also had someone coming in to talk about philanthropy. We bring in the best. We come up with ideas and we find the people who are most knowledgeable in those areas or who have something new and interesting to say in those areas. We are always learning and growing and modifying. It is not just one voice all the time. So there will be kind of modulation of presentation styles, language, etc. So that's a good question. Thank you for that one.
I have another one here. Can you speak a little bit about the application process and what criteria are considered during when you select participants? And are there any prerequisites?
I'll answer backwards. So prerequisites that you are a female leader in a nonprofit arts and cultural organization, that you're either new to that position or have been in your current position for 7 years or fewer. The application process, so that's really the number one prerequisite. The application process itself, this year, as I said, there's the nomination process. The nominator, even if it's yourself, says why this person would be a good fit. After we receive the nominations, they'll be contacted. I'll contact all of the nominees to send them more information about the application. The application, there's, of course, basic personal information, name, job title, LinkedIn profile, etc. And then there will be some substantive questions that you have to answer. Why this program? What would you add, etc. So short essays, 200 to 400 words each, and you'll be able to download a copy of the application itself so you don't have to sit online with it. And then there's a requirement of at least one recommendation. And ideally, the recommendation is from someone within your organization. Because the program is not focused on you at your organization alone, you, of course, are welcome to get a recommendation from someone outside your organization, but certainly someone who can speak to your ability as a leader. Once the applications are all in, again, looking for that diversity of positionality, geographic diversity, as well as people's expertise and focus, and hopefully just come up with a great cohort of 9 women that is similar to this year's, where there's people from the West Coast, people from the middle of the country, people from the East Coast, from academic museums, municipal museums, performing arts, as well as, I think we had 1 curator this year, and then Hope, and then also Lily, who are executive directors of artist space, studio spaces, and places that are dedicated to making.
Great. I have a question for both Hope and Heather. You can answer simultaneous or one after the other, but both have a perspective on it. Can you talk about mentorship in the program, both peer mentorship as well as the coaching?
Let's see. So for mentorship, there's a few different ways. So there's some coaching that's happening as far as specific projects that you are working on and you embark on over the course of the program. You get a lot of feedback as well on yourself. So all of that helps to mentor. But really for me, the place where I was leaning the most for mentorship wasn't sort of the official coaching elements of the program, although those were pretty robust. It was more to my colleagues. So one thing I thought was really nice that Heather and Giovanna did is every project that we were working on, we would be paired with a different group. So usually it was in groups of 3 just because of the size of our cohort. And I got to know everybody really well that way and could really lean on them if there were things that I wasn't quite sure about and whatever we were working on. So for me, that was the place I really looked to for mentorship, but it was kind of support through it.
I would say just from the design of the program that there are coaching sessions that are actually built in, that, as you mentioned earlier, Giovanna, that our sessions that are live online engagement are going to be taking place on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 1 to 4 on those weeks that we mentioned. However, on the off weeks, and I think we have week 5 and 8 where there's no scheduled programming, everyone will sign up for a slot on their own for coaching with me, as well as one of the other facilitators, to either talk about their big project or something more specific that they've been working on. And certainly the mentorship, the peer mentorship of the cohort is a really powerful part. And it's so interesting to me when I hear from alumni guild members that, oh, I met with so-and-so. I went to whatever and met with Robin and we talked about whatever. So these connections that are happening within the network of the Creative Leaders Guild, but that they are very organic, that everybody realizes that they have knowledge that someone else doesn't, and that they also feel comfortable enough to contact the people that they know can help them with whatever their specific project is. So really the mentorship is both structural, built into the program, and then continues after that.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Okay, I think we're coming to the end of our programming today, but I hope I've got one more question for you. What advice would you give to someone who's considering applying and might be on the fence?
Well, I would say just, apply. Like, why not apply? Might as well put your hat in the ring, and that gives you some time to be considering. If you're even considering, I think you kind of know that it's something that you would want to do as well. So go for it. It's my advice.
Great, thank you.
Right. Giovanna, thank you for monitoring our questions and sitting there with your fingers crossed for no technical difficulties, which we seem to have gotten through that without incident. So just wrapping up then, and we're right on the money here. It's 9 minutes to the hour. Hope, I wanted to thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your friendship, for your colleagueship. You and I did not know each other before you started this program, and you were just such a delight in the program. And if I can share this, I know that everybody thought that you were this secret rock star, and that you just kind of blossomed in the perfect. Do you have any last thoughts or comments that you want to share with any of the viewers or people who are
I guess something you've already mentioned, but anybody's welcome to reach out to me if there's any insight that I can offer that would help you in your decisions and your application. I'd also just say, now that I'm through the program, I'm really excited about what the Guild is going to be, which is a wonderful element that really does differentiate it really significantly. So hopefully you'll be joining me.
Great. Thank you. And we will make sure to put your email address and all the things that we have put into the chat as part of the recording for later consumption. So just wrapping up, reminders that the deadline for nominations is Friday, January 10th. Let's see, Giovanna, we put those links in the chat, correct?
Yep.
creativeleadersguild.com/CLGI-nominate. And that's where to put in your nominations for yourself or anyone who you think could benefit from this program. As we mentioned, please be in touch with us. If you have questions, our emails will be there. Those of you who have signed up for this webinar, either you're here live now or you are going to be receiving information and a link to this later. You will also be receiving a template for a justification letter. If you are at an organization, as so many arts and culture nonprofits are, strapped for cash, and you really need to advocate for yourself, or perhaps apply for a grant, which one of our participants in the first year ended up doing, recognizing that you do need to find funding here. You'll also get a copy of this justification letter as part of your follow-up. So unless there are any last questions from our attendees or from you, Hope, or Giovanna,
I'm good.
I will say thank you all and look for some nominations. And I look forward to meeting many of you who are watching this now, hopefully through the application process or through reaching out through LinkedIn or by email. Thank you, everybody, and hope you have a good day.